Thanks very much. Before we begin, I just want to say, someone did say that I look familiar. Someone else, I just want to point out, I'm not Ed Sheeran, and I'm not Ron Weasley. But when you tell people this story later, by all means, say I am. Okay. And in TV style, here are the questions I prepared earlier. So Andy, you had a whole life in career in sport.
I'm not Richard Branson either.
Free upgrade on the Virgin Flight. Okay, yeah. Okay, you've had a whole life in career in sport, player, coach, coach of Great Britain. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I started off as just a fanatical badminton player, loved the game, played at a very young age, and my dream was to be the best badminton player there was ever. So that was what I started to do. I did manage to get a little bit of a career as a professional badminton player 100 years ago, I think that was. And I started coaching at a very young age, qualified at 16 years of age. And because in those days you had to obviously make your impact as a player by coaching extremely fitness and everything else. Unfortunately, I had a few surgeries because I always say that badminton is a violent sport on the body for a non-contact sport. The fitness systems, the movement and the hard training that you have to do is very tough on any muscle groups and so forth. So I've had some surgeries at a very young age, and then I started coaching from there. And then my target was just then to be the best coach that I could be and try and learn and absorb as much as I could as a coach. I started off working a lot in the local community with lots of different groups, and then we started what was called a Future Stars program, and we managed to really develop some good talent, a lot from the Nottinghamshire area, people like Nathan Robertson, Anthony Clark, Donna Kellogg and players like that, and they just evolved and developed and ended up being some of the best players in the world. And my kind of coaching career sort of followed track with that, and I was very fortunate enough to become national coach and then the Great Britain Olympic coach, and this Olympics will be my 4th Olympic cycle now, having been to Sydney, Athens, Beijing and London. So yeah, that's how it came about.
Okay, on the topic of London, with the London 2012 approaching now less than 100 days away, it must be an incredible time to get involved in sport. So, what have your Olympic experiences been like, and what will you be doing in London for 2012?
Yeah, I mean, Olympics is an amazing event. I hope everybody manages to find a way to partake in it. It's the biggest peacetime gathering, and although there's always lots of the media, it is an amazing carnival experience to be around the Olympic Games. And I've been really fortunate to march in on the opening ceremony to all those fantastic Olympic Games and feel the atmosphere. So Sydney was, I think, probably the greatest Olympics. Just the Australians embraced sport in such a way, and it really was carnival. And from a badminton perspective, we managed to win the first ever Olympic medal for our sport in Sydney with Simon Archer and Joe Good, so that made it extra special in terms of performance. In Athens, we went and we got the first ever silver medal with Nathan Robertson and Gail Ems. And then in Beijing, which was just an incredible Olympics, obviously China put so much into delivering that Games, it was such a spectacle. Our team, we didn't come away with a medal, but we did do something which we hadn't done before, which was beat the top Chinese seed in China in their home ground, and so it was rewarding. But in terms of the Olympic Games this time, I'll be working with the enemy. Australia and Canada involved with their preparation, and we're hosting them in a pre-Games training camp in Derbyshire, actually, just before they go into the Olympic Village.
A bit of controversy coming now, like GB and now Canada and Australia, but fair enough. So obviously, as GB coach for 3 Olympics, you had to put together a certain team, and obviously obviously teams that have won medals. So what does it take in putting a badminton performance team together?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, badminton is such a, sometimes people underestimate, it's a multifaceted sport, and there's many, many ingredients, and as well as being great technically on the court, we have to be very physically strong. It's an extremely physically demanding sport in terms of the systems involved with it. And then of course, the nutrition, the psychology, you'll know mentally tough, how you have to be to really make a difference. And most of the top players in the world, physically, technically, tactically, they've all got completely top levels of those ingredients. So it's the guys that mentally are so strong that can get 0.001 ahead of everybody else, and that's often the bit that makes the difference to get the medal. So we were very fortunate. We had a good funding and good team, so I could employ a sports psychologist to work very closely with our players. We did have physiologists and fitness testing, and we did have nutritionists who were all on dietary analysis, so the hot fudge cake wouldn't have gone down too well. So part of my role was to coordinate this team around our athletes to make sure that we got the best for them, and every single one of the athletes in front of us were very different in what they needed. So it wasn't just that everybody got the same, they all had certain areas that they needed more than others, and part of my role was to coordinate that team and make sure that it maximised what it could achieve for that particular individual.
Okay, so are there any particular performance tools that you've used for athletes, and which ones have been the most successful?
Well, we do use a lot of video analysis, a lot of performance analysis, so that we're able to feed back to our athletes very clearly and quickly in their debriefs after matches, exactly what has been good, what's not been so good, what we need to work on before the tournament the next week. We did produce motivational DVDs for every match, like our players' best moments when they were on the podium, when they were winning things. We did produce DVDs on our opponents, so their strengths, their weaknesses, their likes, their dislikes. We also had a lot of togetherness questionnaires in terms of doubles partnerships, so it's quite different in badminton. It is a team, but there's only two of you, so we've all got certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and it's very often if you work really closely together and analyse those strengths and weaknesses, you can, in a combined way, be much stronger than two players that are a lot better than you, and you can find ways to overcome them if you really try and find strategy around it together and playing as a team. So we did an awful lot of work around that, and just basically try and make sure no stone was left unturned in trying to be the best that we could be and really maximise our capabilities.
Okay, so do you have any overriding philosophy when it comes to coaching? Is there anything that you try? And I know you mentioned catering to every individual need, but there's something you have that applies no matter who you're coaching.
I think, well, as a coach, for me, I'm a practical coach, not an academic coach by any means, and tried lots of different things, but there's a few things that you just have to do in any coaching environment, I think. First thing for me would be to create the right environment in the training hall and in the tournament venue, and get a real culture, a performance culture about what it takes to get where you want to be, and whatever that is, whether it's a code of conduct amongst your group, whether it's a strategy that you have, but it's like the do's and don'ts, and making sure that people have got really open mindsets and they're not afraid to change. Once you've got that environment, first of all, you've then got to start developing really special relationships, coach-athlete, so you've got real clarity about what you're trying to achieve, and so those effective relationships. I don't think anything special happens unless you've really got that special relationship between coach and athlete and the squad. Once you've got those two things, for me then, it is coach's responsibility to achieve the goals as quickly as you can. It's not okay to just train hard every day and do 2 or 3 sessions, whatever it is. You can work your butts off every day, but if you're not doing quality work and training wisely, and you're not working on the things that are going to make a difference for the tournament and for you personally, then it's wasted training and wasting endeavour. So as a coach, it's your responsibility to create the environment, to steepen that learning curve, so you get there as quickly as you possibly can. and not just train hard and well and get there very, very slowly. If you've got those three things in place about creating the environment, about really special, effective working relationships, and then that real challenge to steepen the learning curve so that you get there as quickly as you can, then you've got a real chance of succeeding.
Alright, now you mentioned something about caring towards like the individual needs of each and every player, and yet you talk about badminton as a team sport. Are there any like contradictions that come about when you're coaching and trying to achieve both and yet can't at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a contradiction in terms in that badminton is an individual sport. You know, everybody here is competing against everybody else to get to be number one in GB, and yet a lot of the time you probably spend training alongside each other in a team environment. Certainly was the case with our Olympians. We practiced as a group and as a team, and we lifted each other up and we helped each other, but actually we were trying to beat the hell out of each other and become number one in Britain and get more ranking points, get more financial sponsorship and so on and so on. So that's quite difficult, creating harmony amongst that. And those four players, Nathan Roberts and Anthony Clark, Dominic Kellogg, Gail Evans, they travelled the world on the world circuit. They roomed together as mates, but you know, Donna and Gail could play the ladies doubles final at one stage in China. A couple of hours later, Nathan and Anthony would play the men's doubles final together, and then a few hours later, they'd actually be across the net against each other, trying to beat each other. They'd stayed in a room together all the time. They'd play that match, win or lose, get back into the hotel, back into sharing a room, back on a plane for 24 hours. And so it was difficult at times to create that competition, but also keep the harmony of the team, because when you've got 4 or 5 people pushing each other, you can get there much quicker as well. So that was a difficult thing to manage at times.
You mentioned that in China, in the Chinese Olympics, you didn't win any medals, but you were able to beat the top Chinese team on Chinese soil. How have you found it able to compete against China, such a dominant nation when it comes to badminton?
That's a really, really tough question. I mean, China, as you all know, dominates our sport and has done for many years, and culturally it's probably the number one sport with table tennis in China, and so many people play it, and you know, they have very good, great centralised training systems from a very young age, and here it's not really a sexy sport, and it's got a low profile, and everybody wants to be David Beckham or somebody like that rather than a badminton star, so we don't get the big numbers. But the only way we can compete with China is really by being clever and being very tactically astute and training very wisely and trying to match them, not beat them physically, but also be very clever about how we compete and how we are tactically astute and change things, change the pace, and mix it up, bring in new ideas all the time, and try and use any performance edge to get on top of them. And just occasionally we'll get some success against them, but it's far from regular at the moment, I'm afraid.
What would be the main components of the sport, such as technically, tactically, and mentally, physically, and how do you use them?
Well, that was pretty good, because those would be most of them. We have to be physically strong, and you know, we have to be able to be the best we can be from a physical point of view. Technically, you've got to have every single shot in the book. You can't have any weak areas at the top level. So if you haven't got a backhand smash, or you haven't got a cross-court net shot from an inch off the ground, it gets fouled out. So you have to be technically capable in all areas. And I think tactically, you know, we've all got a style of play that we love. You know, might say, well, I'm an attacking player, or I'm a defensive player, or you've got a way of playing that you want to play, but so often that doesn't get the job done, you know, and so you want to attack and play that way, but that might fall right into the hands of your opponent's strategy. So you've got to be prepared to switch to plan B and then plan C almost effortlessly without even worrying about it, because whatever gets the job done, you know, you've got to be able to do it without fear as well. Because so often our players, they come off and, well, what happened? How did it go? I lost. Well, why? And, you know, could you change anything? Oh, no, it just wasn't good enough. That was rubbish. And so this willingness to be tactically adaptable is really important. And then, you know, I really think the mental side in any sport naturally and challenge yourself to be tough mentally and have mental toughness, of course, is the thing that really stands achievers out, you know. And so to train mentally, to make sure that you can deal with, you know, thinking correctly under pressure, and you can deal with motivation, so keep training when you really don't feel like it. You can make yourself fulfill your goals with a mental perspective. This is a massive part of any kind of performance.
Okay, final question now. You've already mentioned that you're working with Canada and Australia for 2012. Is there anything else you're going to be doing during the Olympics and Paralympics?
Well, that will be main part of my role. I have a few other hats on with the British guys, and a few other events involved in the Institute of Sport projects that will be heavily based around the Olympics as well, and various other things. But getting Australia and Canada in the best shape that they can as they acclimatise in the UK just before they go into the Olympic Village before the competition will be a big part of my role.
Okay, well, Andy,